the collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned today. Very excited to have BC with us. Dave, two new faces. Great to have you on. Dane as well, coming back for a fourth or fifth time, I think now. So good to have you on. Absolutely. Now, while I'm going through that, y'all should be hitting the buttons. Like it, subscribe it, notify yourself so that you get your emails every day whenever we go live, which is, of course, every day. If you have any thoughts, comments, or questions, by all means, put them up in the comment section, kind of like this one right here, so that we can engage them directly, morning/evening. Oh, good to see you, Max. And with that, let's get some intros out of the way. BC, you want to hit us first? Give us a little 30, 45-second rundown, who you are, where you come from, all that good stuff.
Yeah, the first problem I have is I'm a long talker. I talk a whole lot. So if I start rambling on, y'all just cut me off.
All right. We don't like talking over here. I'm out of here.
Yeah. No, my background is, I mean, you can tell from my accent, I'm from the South in the U.S. and background's 4 years in the U.S. Army Infantry, college degree in psychology, and 20 years in law enforcement with a city department, working mostly gangs, patrol, homicide unit, FBI task force. So I've been fortunate to do a lot of the fun stuff in police work, and now doing a podcast called the Disruptors Podcast with BC and Ski. And we just interview people in bands, military background, police background, reform, Nazi skinhead, gang members set up in the future. Like, try to have a lot of fun with that, and getting into writing and trying to get some novels published too.
Outstanding.
Just a couple of quick things. First of all, I was super confused when I saw BC Sanders, because I saw BC and Ski. I was like, oh, maybe he's a friend of Dane's. Maybe he skis here in BC. Like, I better check this guy out, see what he's all about. And, obviously I was totally wrong. So my question is, whereabouts in the U.S. are you located, if you don't mind?
I keep things generic. We'll just say the South.
Check, because
there are a few southern states.
Yeah, we spent 2 years down in Texas, so I was wondering where the twang was from. So,
right. Yeah, a little more on the East Coast than Texas.
Yeah, fair enough.
Raj. Dave, you want to give us a rundown, who you are, where you come from, all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. So Dave Cadle, I'm a professional mechanical engineer. I've been in industry for about 20 plus years. Worked through my career and continually improving all the time. I've got a variety of different certifications that applied to my roles, and I'm currently moving into a vice president role with the International Mining Company starting Monday, actually. It's a bit of a change for me. On the personal side of family, I'm married with kids, and my kids are essentially almost out of the house now, but it's been a pretty cool experience with them. And wife and I have been together for 20 plus years. Just got together when we were quite young. One of the cool things I found with our family is we work together as a really good unit, and my kids are pretty aggressive in their sport careers, always have been. They race pro level motocross, basically all the way through the ranks. I've done a bit of that as well, competing at the national level in the vet age classes. And over the last couple of years, I've gotten into endurance running. I've competed in a number of 100-kilometer running races, bit of endurance swimming, enjoy skiing in the Kootenays here, all the rest of that.
Mm-hmm. So not busy at all, just, hanging out around the house doing kind of nothing.
Yeah, just kind of watching TV a lot,
Like my wife, who is a professional mechanical engineer as well, who also works for an international mining company, and who also competed against you last year at the Broken Goat 52 Click, which was a red hot race, by the way, as you probably know. And I only know this because I skulked through your, when I followed you this morning, I thought, better check out who this dude is as well. I wonder if he skis in BC. And and so I read your reports on the runs, and I laughed out loud actually when I was reading your Broken Goat report, because I know what a sufferfest that was, standing laughing at all of the participants as they walk by. I mean, I laughed because it's not like it's an ambush. You go into these things knowing they're going to be super hard, so don't be offended if I laugh when you whine about how hard it is, which is my MO. So it was fun to read your report about the race last year.
Yeah, that was quite the experience. I went very quickly from competing for a top 10 position to trying to finish the event at all.
Yeah, that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
That is the way it goes. Dane, it has been a while since you've been on, so why don't you give us a rundown as well, and then we'll get into the convo. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good. My name's Dane Tudor. I would call at this point, ex-pro skier. Skied professionally for the past 15 years. Film skier, skied all over the world, out of helicopters, hiked lines, camped in Alaska, thrown triple corks, done all kinds of crazy stuff out in the mountains. And now I'm moving over to the film side of things. So building a filming business, Shred House Media. You can check it out, shredhousemedia.com. And really focusing on that aspect now and just really entertaining the entrepreneurial spirit, which is what got me to where I am today. And so just continuing along that path. And usually when I hang out with guys like Dave and people on this podcast, I always feel kind of undergunned in a way because, you know, they've got like all these different degrees and whatnot. And my path is so much different, but always great and honored to be here with great people.
Absolutely. Well, we like having a diverse range of thought, which is the key. Shaun,
Well, diverse is one thing, but let's not under that speak there, Dane, because in my live chat, just before I came over here, I rattled off who was going to be on the guest panel today. And once I mentioned your name, comments came in like, Dane's so rad. And I said, yeah, I shredded across that the 7 summits with that guy, and he can rip. He knows how to ride. And another couple of comments about how rad you are as an athlete. But I did throw out a little bit of a stinger because it's my way. I said, yeah, he's rad on a bike. But when we were shredding the 7 summits, I'm not sure he was aware that I was at least 20 years older than he was and keeping him in sight. So I'm sure he's feeling that one.
Yeah, well, I'm catching up to you there.
Oh, I think you surpassed me a long time ago.
So, and little known fact, Dane is also a fantastic runner. I'm not sure he'll admit to that, but he is.
Oh, well, I just got started, but you know, I like to stay at the front of the pack.
As it should be.
As it should be. I like it. Now, just going to hit these real quick. Got some comments coming in. Or Winterstorm jumps in. Good morning, everyone. Andrea up late. BC Sanders. Looks like you got a fan. Cody's coming in with the hearts. Max Sydney. Congrats, Dave. And Terminal City says, BC, are you or were you a skateboarder? Nice.
Yes. Yeah. And I wear the hat for a reason. I grew up in the whole skateboard culture of the late 80s, and most people freak out when I start talking about like punk rock bands and hardcore and ska, and they're like, you know, you sound like a redneck from the South, but I'll sit there and talk skating all day, talk music all day. But yeah, I still wear hats, still wear band t-shirts, still dress kind of like I did when I was like 15 or 16.
I dig that.
Dig it. Now, we're going to get into this conversation here, and I'm going to hit you with a quick definition. The question is, obviously, what is realistic? And the reason, like I was saying earlier, why we want to get into this was yesterday, Coach Jake brought up the fact that you got to have kind of realistic goals. And I really wanted to find out what you guys feel like, because y'all do some pretty unrealistic things compared to the average person or compared to regular folk out there. And here's the definition I have right now, which is accepting things as they are in fact, and not making decisions based on unlikely hopes for the future would be something as realistic. But what do you guys think? I want to hear, when you hear the term realistic, what's the first thoughts? BC, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
All right. Whenever, and I've done things that people told me couldn't be done. I mean, nothing great like scaling a mountain or anything, but just in the police world where people say, we don't do that here. We don't do federal investigations like a RICO or racketeering where we're going to dismantle an entire gang set. So I just kind of was like, I think we can use that to our ability. So I just started networking, talking to FBI agents in the area, and looked at it, and people kept saying the same term, like, it's just not realistic to do that. It's not realistic. Well, it is if you just look at it and say, this is the problem we have. These are the variables we have. And then why can't we do it? And usually what you find out is people say, well, we haven't done that before. So if they haven't done it before, then in their mind, they think it's unrealistic, right? The same thing. Like if someone says that mountain, you can't climb that mountain, somebody's going to come along and do it. They just look at it as a problem. What are the variables? Let me get the equipment, let me get the right attitude and go do it. But that's my thing is like, I kind of like when someone tells me something is not realistic, and then I just put forward a plan, do it. And then very politely say, hey, use this next time when you start using terms like, we can't do that, or that's unrealistic. Well, we did it. It was a success. So moving forward, open your mind up a little bit, get a little PMA, a little positive mental attitude, and get serious about whatever the problem is and focus on the variables. It's really, in that sense, it's not that hard once you kind of unlock the brain box.
Like it. Dane, what about yourself?
I think what BC said there was really interesting, and I agree with him on that topic for sure. I think realistic is definitely an interesting term. When I was younger, people would say things to me like, oh, you can't make money in skiing and, stuff like that. And I don't know at what age I was at that point. I could only been like 14 years old. So 20 years later and 15 years as a professional free skier making money in the industry, I would say that they were incorrect in their assumptions, and they were maybe being realistic in that assumption. Though I think that there's always a possibility that you can do unrealistic things if you have that persistence and you are, say, in like the top percentile of a sport or anything that you're doing. And I think it's great to go after things that people think are unrealistic, because if you have really high aspirations, you're going to go for things that most people think aren't possible. And it's going to be a challenging road for sure. And you have to have a lot of discipline and consistency to keep going until you reach that, to some people, unrealistic goal. But most things are achievable. And I think that the human race has proved that over time. I mean, we have airplanes that fly in the sky, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense to put that much weight in the air and fly it around the world.
Yeah, 100%. Dave, what do you think when you hear realistic?
Yeah, certainly echoing on Dane's comments there. I think what's realistic at one point in your life is totally different as you advance with applying that consistent work. If I reflect back on my fitness, I guess, I basically do athletics for fun, right? Don't make any money at it, never tried to. But what was realistic for me 7 years ago is completely different now. At a certain point, it was a real challenge to go and do a 4-kilometer, 5-kilometer jog even. And then, slowly working every day consistently, embracing the challenge of that, and slowly getting better and better and better, and applying that consistency. It changes what's realistic to an individual. That can be applied outside of sports as well, right? From a career perspective, essentially advancing up through my career from almost, nothing, a farm kid, to, a vice president of a mining company. What's real and what the future could potentially look like changed throughout that, and it changes, every year as I continue to advance.
Mm-hmm. Shaun, thoughts?
Well, the fellas have already said everything that I kind of need to say, because that's kind of how I feel as well, right from the get-go. And I'll do it a little bit differently. When someone's in front of me and they say, that's not very realistic, I get to look at that person and think, obviously, they don't know me. Because that's the way I feel, man. Like, if you know me, you're never going to tell me that is not realistic, Shaun, if you know me. But if you don't know me, it'll be thrown around casually as if it's not realistic. But it's not realistic for other people, perhaps. But it can be realistic for me, because I believe that I can make it happen. And my body of work suggests that I can make it happen. So I have self-belief. When someone tells me that I can't do something, I just freaking double down. So I appreciate when someone steps up on me and says that's not realistic, particularly when they don't know me, because now the fireworks get to shoot off. And so I think that you got to know yourself. You got to know what you've accomplished in the past. And you've got to have faith that through the pattern that you formed, you can continue putting out that same pattern, moving into the future and building off your body of work. So again, I enjoy when someone tells me that that's not very realistic.
BC, you got anything to add?
I always do, man. No, I was gonna say one of the big things people worry part. So I think that's part of it when someone says something's not realistic. Also, already thinking about the failure part instead of just saying this is what we're going to focus on. I mean, I failed at a lot of things, and it never it never slowed me down. I don't really care too much about failing, and if I do, I just kind of refocus and go, all right, this is what I need to do, or this is where I went wrong. But that whole idea of failure in your head, or the idea that what happens, oh no, if I fail, like, well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, failure can be deadly in some situations, but in most, just don't sweat that too much. Just focus on whatever your outcome is. But I don't know, man. I think some people also can't laugh at themselves and kind of relax a little bit in that sense. They're a little rigid or hard line. And so then they start focusing on that, or maybe they've built themselves into this image of someone who is like this alpha person who is always going to succeed. And I'm the best at everything. And then they try something, and maybe in their world, it wasn't realistic. And then they end up failing, and it deflates their ego. So I don't know. I don't dig ego too much, man. I try to be ego free, but some people might disagree.
We try to keep this as an ego free zone as well, but
they
sneak in every once in a while.
Yeah.
Dave, you got any extra thoughts?
Yeah. BC was reflecting on some of the challenges. So, again, I can be a very positive person, but I also have learned my limits in multiple different instances. And, I can go on example after example, some of it being challenges with running races where, I just hit the wall and wasn't able to finish, or I decided it wasn't realistic for me to push at that point in time because the impacts it would have, in other areas of my life. A good example was my last 100-kilometer race that I tried to compete in. I only really had about 5 weeks to train for it because, I injured my shoulder quite badly back in March skiing with Dane, actually. And, I was off running for 4 months. But I thought, you know what? I'm signed up for this event. I'm going to give it my best shot and see what I can do. And after 85 kilometers, it wasn't practical for me to try to finish it, even though I knew I could have. So from a realistic perspective, yeah, you know what? I could try to push the boundaries every single time, but to what detriment to myself and to my, my family, my long-term benefit, right? So, I see that as just sliding scale. Is it realistic for me to achieve certain things in my career? Maybe, but is that the right thing for me at that point as well? Is it the right thing for my family and for those around me? And, so finding that fine balance to me is kind of the key. It might be good right now, might be realistic in the future, but it's a matter of ensuring that I don't let ego drive me too hard to the detriment of, again, those around me primarily.
Yeah, absolutely. Dane, you got any extra thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think what Dave said there, he really nailed it in quite a few ways. And just to elaborate with my own thoughts is, I think that being realistic, it's like so much about people's beliefs and where they are in life. So some people may think something isn't realistic because of their belief system, and other people will think something is realistic, maybe not right now, but in the future, because they believe that it's possible. So it really depends on how open-minded your belief system is. And then it could also be that something is unanticipated, comes along, and you end up building something that is completely unrealistic to most people and even yourself. Like, let's just say Jeff Bezos, for example, builds Amazon and just becomes one of the world's magnates. And, I don't think that he would have anticipated the success that he was going to have, or think that that was realistic at that time. So it's, there's a multitude of aspects to it. And then as far as what Dave was saying, you may think something is realistic, but in the moment it may not be. So, I could be out skiing and think, oh, I could do this right now, and crash. And it's like, okay, well, that maybe wasn't a realistic expectation in this moment. And I need to temper my expectations of what I think is possible right now, but I can work towards this in the future.
John, you got anything?
Yeah, I was lucky that I got set up right from the get-go with some people who inspired me to absorb challenges. So, funnily enough, this morning, just before I hopped into this live, a friend from Operation Pegasus Jump this year had said that he'd bumped into an old friend of mine from basic training like frickin' 40 years ago. And his first, I won't give his name. Anyway, I said, hang on a second, he's still in the game? And this guy said, yeah, he's still in the game. I said, just give me a sec. So I scrambled through my photos and I pulled out a photo from week 6 of Infantry Battle School.
Back in the day.
Where we've got our FN FALs on our hips, looking all large and in charge, not knowing what we're doing at all. And so I shot him that photo. And what was realistic in that moment? I didn't know, because I hadn't gone through the pipeline yet. I sure as heck never thought I'd be a tier 1 sniper and assaulter when I was hanging out looking large and in charge in week 6. Because, well, of course, special operations didn't exist at that time. So how can you imagine what doesn't exist? And if it did exist, how can you imagine that you're going to be in it when you've only just started getting haircuts? So I think that it comes down to, for me anyway, I don't have to visualize like insane outcomes per se. I do, but I don't have to. What I do have to do for Shaun is this. Put a problem in front of me and I'll start going through it. And over a timeline, I'll have some success. But along the way, I'll fail a boatload. And we talk about this on a regular occasion over here. I love failure. I pursue failure. Wins actually kind of bore me. Failures intrigue me. When I was young, wins appealed to me. Now failures appeal to me. And so, funnily enough, just yesterday, after yesterday's The Collective podcast, I went immediately into another podcast called The Quiet Professional, where one of the co-hosts, Ben Click, is also a sniper, Canadian Armed Forces veteran sniper. And Ben and I were comparing notes, or what we were doing was we were laughing out loud about how many failures we'd had in that course. It's designed to start stacking up failures, so you have to move through the sniper process. And not many people pass that course. Everyone fails throughout it, but it's how many failures can you absorb and then turn it around into keep on engaging and turning things into a success. And so Ben and I both agreed that up until that course, and I'd already done some hard charging courses, that was the first course where I was slapped upside the head with the amount of failures that I had to absorb in a condensed timeline. Like it was only a few months, but I felt like I failed 1 gajabillion times. And I think we need that, or I needed it. I think everyone needs it. A condensed block of time where you fail so many times that you can't even count them all. You can't even track them all. There's just failure after failure after failure in order to teach you what is realistic in the moment. So once you get that sort of ego check, then you can get to play. I like to believe that for Shaun, I need to experience the extreme edges of the left and the right. If I'm bumping up against the edges and my jalopy is on fire because I'm scraping down the guardrails, that's where I'm happiest, because I am understanding the extent of my operational bandwidth. So for me, I feel that I'm capable of anything within reason. I do like to believe that I have a realistic sense of what I can accomplish in the future based on my past. I have confidence because I've built confidence. And I think that is the key to realistic for me, is if you lack confidence because you don't have a body of work to rely on, the moment that you start to fake confidence, now you're not being real with yourself about how realistic the thing is in front of you. I think as long as you stand righteously, understanding what your experience based is and what you've accomplished in your life, now you're being real in the moment about the possible realistic outcome. I hope that makes sense.
Dave, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really like the thought about discussion around faking confidence and having to go through experiences and understanding failure and learning from that and growing from that. I can apply that to all kinds of situations in my life where, maybe I'll apply that to our motocross races that we host at our Kootenai Motocross Club. So actually, Dane Tudor and I are part of a motocross committee here, volunteer-based, to promote motocross racing in the Kootenai area. And over the last 5 years, we've been developing the club and the facility and putting on and hosting club races for the community. And we've learned so much over the years by, consistently putting on these events. Every time we do an event, we learn more. But we learn because something didn't go right on that one event. So we can continually improve and improve along the way. And now at this point, we've probably done 20 different club races, and it just seems so smooth compared to how it was in the past. If we would have looked back 4 or 5 years, it just wasn't realistic for us to even consider hosting events, the size and scale that we're doing now. But it was because we learned from those errors and learned from those mistakes. And we realized we had to get the right team around us to make, it realistic for us to succeed at a higher level from a club perspective. It was just, I would say at the beginning stages, it was fake. We weren't really knowing what we needed to do to make it successful, but we had to go through the learning process and then continually applying and not giving up, not canceling races because, it didn't look like people were going to come and so on. Now, to me, that's kind of a key example, but I can go on and apply exactly the same mentality to skiing or to running or to mountain biking or to my work environment. It's just so key to be consistent and keep trying and learning from your errors as you go along.
Yeah, 100%. BC, thoughts?
Yeah, just the whole idea of what we call cocky. I don't know if y'all ever heard that term, but okay, good. Sometimes I use
I've been
words
called it a lot, even by my wife.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
I get the opposite. Like
I know.
you seem like just very even.
Well, I am, but
tempered.
I'm confident, and sometimes my confident is misconstrued as cocky.
See, I look at it as confidence or being confident in something. You've got the background or the skills to support that. Cocky is just all mouth,
All chirping, yeah.
Yeah. Just someone just telling you how great they are, and you're like, okay, tough guy. Like, I hear you talking, but and we get it in the cop world. You'll run across people who will beat their chest and tell you how great they are, and they're this and they're that, and it's sometimes stupid stories about some use of force where they had to fight this guy or something. And like most people are like, nah, whatever, man. You know what I mean? Like, you're really not that squared away as an officer or detective or deputy or agent or whatever. You're just kind of cocky. You're around a bunch of like other cops or other officers, and you're just inflating yourself to try to impress them. But that growing up, I always heard that term cocky. And so the older men, that would hang around and whittle sticks, and sip on Schlitz beer and stuff, they kind of tell you, like, son, just keep your eye on that boy right there. He's cocky, and then you learn, like, that's not a good thing. Like, and you start to pick up on the loudmouths, whether it's on a basketball court or something, and they're just talking trash, and then you take them to school and you're like, all right, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I said my wife has called me cocky. She called me that when she didn't know me very well. Because she didn't know my background. She didn't know that I was in Tier 1 at one time. I mean, she didn't know much because I didn't talk about that stuff. So, I mean, I was a confident guy who was used to owning my own verbiage. And if someone stepped up on me and said something dumb, I'd look them in the eye and say, that was dumb. And some people don't like that because I'm direct, concise, and to the point. And sometimes when I was younger, sometimes I didn't have the finesse to deliver a professional assessment of the dumb thing that they just done. And so I just shrug my shoulders and say, dude, that was stupid. When I could have delivered it in an entirely different way. But it kind of comes across as cocky sometimes. Now I'm older. I've learned how to do it a little bit better. But I still do have a little bit of an edge to me with my confidence that can sometimes put people off, because I've been in too many realistic situations to put up with nonsense. And so when someone steps up and they're operating in a parallel fantasy universe, talking about how they're going to do this, that, and the other thing, when they've barely got their own shoelaces tied, I mean, I just don't put up with it. So I start applying some realism for their behalf, where I'll look at them and say, dude, you ain't going to finish that race. Or, dude, you can't levitate. Whatever it takes to put the reality check in the moment.
You know, the funny thing is that's all true. But at the same time, and I've seen this happen both with me and other people, is that when somebody does challenge you and is correct, you're not overly boisterous, or you don't hold on to the point that, you know, to any length of degree, in that you have the confidence to say, no, that's wrong. But if you're then proven wrong, you go, oh, you know what? I was wrong. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
For sure.
So like that's I want to just make sure, because it could come across that you just wander around telling people that they're wrong.
Oh, no.
But
I tell myself that I'm the dumbest person on the planet at times. So, you know, like,
there you go.
You're dumb, I'm dumb, we're all dumb.
We're all there at some point, that's for sure. Dane, you got any thoughts on what we're going over?
I mean, I could certainly talk about that side of the equation, though I'm not sure how I see that it relates to what is realistic that much. I think we're deviating a little bit.
Oh, I don't think it's that deviated. I mean, like, if someone doesn't operate in a real universe based on their fantasy interpretation of how this realistic thing is going to unfold in front of them, and they're not even barely breathing oxygen at that point because they're so off the planet, like, I feel it's my responsibility to say, dude, you're about to run for 100 kilometers. Where's your water? You know, these are moments where we're supposed to interject some common sense even to the moment where they are being completely unrealistic. So I'll be realistic because they're being unrealistic. That's what I'm saying.
What do you think?
I can see that. Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. I can tell you a story about something like that. So we were going on a night ride on the Seven Summits, and it was just a local group of us. And one of the guys brought along a friend of his that like had just come to town or something. And, you know, we're going on a night ride. It's the middle of summer, but it's still going to be cold up there. It's nighttime. It's windy. And this guy shows up without a jacket, with no water, with like no anything. And I just looked at this guy. I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you don't have any of the gear to go on this ride. And he ended up coming, and I think he was cold and all that kind of stuff. But for sure, I mean, he didn't show up being cocky or anything like that. He was just unprepared at that point. But he probably also just got sandbagged into the ride and didn't know what was actually going on. But
well, congratulations.
He made it.
Good times.
Yeah.
Now, I do have any other thoughts on anything? I got a couple questions here on the comment section, but if you guys got any thoughts, we can hit on those. Good? Okay. So Max Sidney jumped in earlier and he put this, and I think the problem with realistic / unrealistic is the lack of a timeline. For example, me running 100K, like Dave, isn't realistic in the next year, but in 5, if I train, yeah, it is. So do you guys think that is the bit of the issue, and just the fact of not being able to extend the timeline to fix a job? Dave, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, right? Because it may not be realistic today, it may not be realistic tomorrow, but with the right plan, the right coaching, the right mindset and consistency, anything can be realistic. You know, of course, unless you have like terrible bone spurs or something like that prevent you from physically doing something. But, you know, it may not be realistic for somebody to, go run 100 Ks tomorrow, But with the consistency and with the confidence you build by training and having small steps along the way, your reality of what you can accomplish changes. So it might be a 5K as your goal a month from now. It might be a 10K 6 months from now. It might be a marathon a year from now. And then that just continues to expand. There's people that are running literally 300-kilometer races, 500-kilometer races. And some of these people are doing it back to back to back, like 4 or 5 of these events in a summer. It wasn't that long ago, like 10 years ago, that it was just mind-boggling for people to consider running that style of event. And now people are doing it. So I think the reality of what you can accomplish changes as you experience new events and you push yourself.
Mm-hmm. Dane, you got any thoughts?
Pretty much what Dave said. Yeah, I think it's just about consistency and staying focused over time. I think most things that we want to accomplish are definitely not realistic in the first year unless you already have experience in that area. But over a 5 or 10 year timeline, then most things are pretty realistic if you're going to put in that consistency and stay focused on the task. It's like, I don't know if it takes 10 years to become a doctor or something like that as far as schooling, or if you were to even look at myself and it took me 18 years to become a professional free skier. So anything that we're going to do, if we want to do it on a super high level, is definitely going to take a minimum of 10 years. And typically we overestimate what we can do in the short term and underestimate what we can do in the long term. So people may come in with unrealistic expectations in the beginning. And then if they don't have that discipline and consistency to stay on track throughout that extended period of time, then they won't be able to accomplish what's realistic for them in the long term.
100% PC thoughts?
Yeah, I see it a lot with people trying to lose weight. You have a lot of officers that will gain weight after about 4 or 5 years of being out of the academy, and they want to lose it like immediately. And sometimes when you pack on 10 or 20 or 60 pounds, it's kind of tough to do that. But instead of them focusing on, can I lose 1 pound within a week or two or whatever, they think they got to lose like 10 or 15 in a week or two. And so when they set these short, their next milestone or whatever is very short, and it's not realistic, then they get defeated, they give up, and they go back to doing the same thing they were doing before. Where a lot of times it's just like, it's like football. You don't have to score every time. You just got to get that few yards until you eventually get a first down. And you keep getting your first down until you get into the end zone. It's just that you have to set these small increments in the timeline. And then if you're hitting those, then eventually you're going to hit your goal. But a lot of that is just setting down and being realistic about the timeline and then how you're going to accomplish those steps. But most people won't even put it in a timeline or say, this is what I expect to accomplish by this time frame. And so then they don't even have a plan. They're just out there kind of getting disgruntled or upset because they're not making the gains that they want to make.
Interesting. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, what the fellas were saying, I agree with, and it caused me to think of a better way for me to explain my position on this, and so I'm going to use a different career to explain it. So when I got out of Tier 1, I eventually started riding mountain bike. Bought a mountain bike, didn't know what I was going to do with it, other than ride it. And then eventually I thought, I'm going to go do my first race. And it was a little shorty race. It was a cross-country race. It would have lasted about an hour. And I've mentioned this in the past. I was standing on the start line, looking at all these skinny nerds. Because I was still a warrant officer in Tier 1 in my mind, that I could literally do anything, accomplish anything. I had full realistic belief in my abilities. What I didn't have was a realistic sense of the outcome. Because as I stood on that line and looked at those nerds and thought, I'm going to smash these guys. I was smashed so hard, when the gun went off, I never saw those guys again. I only saw them for about 10 seconds. They rounded the corner and they were gone. And I was so dead last in that race that when I came across the finish line, the support staff was actually tearing down the event. I mean, there wasn't even a finish line for me to cross. I was that late. And so when I got across with a dismal performance, what I did think was, frick, that'll never happen again. And so I got my nose to the grindstone and started grinding. And I started getting into the sport, started realizing what I could or couldn't do, and then set a goal for myself. And it was to become a world champion in 24-hour solo mountain bike racing. So along the way, I had to, of course, sign up for my first Worlds, which I've done several. My first Worlds was so bad for me that halfway through the race, I was on my hands and knees vomiting so hard it was a Monty Python skit. The next day, I was in emergency with internal bleeding. I still finished the race. I still placed top 10 while I was puking, because that's the way I like to do things, but it was dumb. And so my expectation of myself was I was going to smash, but I didn't smash. But the difference is I have a realistic confidence in myself to execute. I just had an unrealistic expectation of the outcome because I was still new to the world championship game. Well, eventually one day I became a world champion, but that was through a whole pile of failures. And it was through a whole pile of constantly recalibrating my understanding of I expect this from myself because I'm confident, but I'm not meeting my expectations as a visualized outcome. And why is that? There's things that I got to correct. There's failures that I've got to face. There's things that I got to fix. The normal process that everyone has to go through in order to achieve their big dreams, their big goals, their visualized outcomes that keep them awake at night because they're so dreamy McDreamy. I think that the process is the same for all of us, for everyone. I think the distinction is whether you believe you're capable of it and then trying to keep your self-belief synchronized to some degree within a 10 or 15% variation that you can actually do it. So believe you can do it, but see the results demonstrating that you can do it as well.
I like that. KH jumps in with this comment. I think it goes to what you're saying there, Shaun, is a lot of people ask what happens if I fail instead of saying what happens if I succeed. I think this is a critical point because if you don't actually ask yourself what happens if you succeed, I don't think you ever will. And then any thoughts on that before? I got another question here, but
I think what's interesting about that, and I think what goes along with some of the other comments that have been made today, is it's a journey. It's not the destination. And that's like a super cliche quote, but it truly is. Like when you start something and you're like, oh, I'm going to be this, it's really not about the destination. It's about the journey and about the consistency and about doing that for a long period of time. So once you reach that level, there's going to be something else that you're going to want to pursue, or maybe you're just going to want to go to the next level within that same aspect. And so you're going to guaranteed fail along the way, and most likely many times. And you're also going to succeed along the way many times. And that's why it's not about the destination, because you can win once and you can fail 5 times and you can win twice and fail 2 times. And it's just going to be that consistency over and over again. There's really not like an end destination when it really comes down to it.
I like that. BC, you got any thoughts to add?
Nah.
Nice.
he nailed it. I'm good with that.
Dave, any thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's what we've seen in the motocross racing with my kids, you know, as they progressed from beginners basically to the pro level ranks. The reality is they literally fail almost every race. Winning is the exception. But in order to become really good at anything, you literally have to go through the process for years and years and years, failing along the way and slowly progressing and seeing what's possible by seeing what people are capable of, you know, around you. And I think it really is important to surround yourself with the right people in order to understand what people are actually capable of, and to find those and seek those people out that are doing what you aspire to, or are positive in the same way that you're positive in around what you're trying to achieve. And then it becomes more realistic to achieve your objectives that way.
Absolutely. Shaun, you got any points on that?
Yeah, just to play off what I said yesterday, I think it was to Sarah McMahon on the guest panel, and it was maybe at 40, I'm a really competitive guy to this day, but I compete against myself. I don't mind competing against others. I mean, that keeps it fun. I like a little bit of chirping back and forth. That's fun. But mostly I'm competing against me. So when Dane and I were ripping across the 7 summits that day, like I'm competing against Dane, but not trying to beat him. I'm playing a game with myself. I'm trying to stay on his wheel or stay in front of his front wheel, whatever the case is. There's a game within the game for me. I'm not trying to smash on Dane. I'm trying to smash on myself. I love a game within a game, so I have a competitive nature. But it's trying to figure out how to harness that nature. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is because a lot of the things that we've talked about in what is realistic, we've been referring to in the sporting sense, or in the event sense, or in the competitive arena sense. And I think that, again, at 40, I was really competitive against goals. But now at 60, like, I don't care about the wins, is what I said yesterday. Like the moment that someone's hanging something over my neck, at some medal or whatever, like I'm not even there. I'm like in the future already plotting what my next scheme is, what my next event is, what I can sink my teeth into next. I am so not interested in the wins nowadays. I'm interested in moving through the wins to hit the next problem. So the path, for sure, I've always walked the path for several decades. But now at not the back end of my path, but towards the back end of the path, like wins don't even interest me. Moving through the win to get the next problem is what interests me.
Like that.
Just one, if I can say one more thing really
jump on
quick.
it, Dean.
So as far as failure is concerned, there's one important thing that I believe is that you want to make sure that you manage your risk in failure. So you can never fail so big that it's really hard to come back from. Like you still want to make sure that your failures are within check. You want to have like small failures and a decent win, and small failures and a decent win. That way you can kind of keep things moving in the right direction. So like if you want to use motocross as an example, if you're like, man, I'm going to go out today and I'm going to like crush the competition, and you go and blow your brains out, well, good luck crushing the competition, right? That's going to be really hard to come back from. And so you can reference that across most things that you do in life. Obviously, you still want to take risk, but you have to do it intelligently and make sure that you protect your downside.
But if you're not first, you're last.
Well, that's a good way to blow up then.
Absolutely is. I've heard that so many times. It's kind of hilarious. Now, any other thoughts on that before I jump on the next comment?
Yes, to Dane's point, we have to protect ourselves. He's right. And the thing that typically stops us from protecting ourselves is our ego. And so my very last world championship that I was in, a 24 solo, I had to quit only 8 hours into the race. I mean, the race had just barely freaking started. And I quit because I hated the course. I hated everything about it. It wasn't a mountain biker's course. It was a dusty gravel road racers course that bored me. And 8 hours in, I was at a point where I felt if I continued to complete the race to see whatever outcome I got, it would ruin me for mountain biking. And I had to like check my ego. My ego wanted to smash. But Shaun realized that if he smashed, that would be the end of it all for me. So I quit. I'm not a quitter, but I quit, so I'm a quitter. And so that sucked. That was a salty sandwich that I had to chow down on for a long time, not just that day. And so there's a lot of lessons to quitting something for the right reasons. And it's only maybe sometimes months or years later that you can look back and think, that was the right decision. That saved my butt for the future, as it were.
Mm-hmm. BC, you got any other points on that?
No, I'm just laughing like an idiot over here at some of the stuff. It cracks me up. So sorry about that.
Love it.
I giggle quite a bit, man.
It's good. So we got and you got a couple fans in the crowd here. BC, glad to see you from the last known president. We got Carly and Beignet hitting you up. They're having a little conversation in the comments here too. It's pretty funny. But this is the question I want to hit on, and I think it's great. So Eternal City Training jumps in. He says, when you find yourself inspired by someone else who is way beyond you in experience or competence, how do you realistically start to develop yourself in that direction? I think it's a great question. And BC, I'm going to start with you because you're busy giggling. So what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of run into that like when I was younger and playing pickup games of basketball. So I never played for like a rec league or for a high school. I mean, I played, you walk up to a random basketball court, there's strangers on the court, and you say, I got next. And you pick four of your buddies and you run the court. When I first started doing that, and I never was really good at basketball, but I enjoyed playing it. But when I first started, I used to play with this dude who was, I mean, down here in the U.S., it'd be like a Harlem Globetrotter. Like the stuff he would do to basketball was absolutely incredible. So what I tried to do was emulate what he was doing. So I would try to keep up with someone who was about 6 years older than me. He was 20 years old, still in high school, and everybody called him Narc, which is like slang for undercover cop in a high school. But he was, showing me the ropes and teaching me. And I even knew back then that I could not be as good as him in the amount of time, playing basketball. But I would do stupid stuff like dribble basketballs in the rain and think, well, if I can dribble and handle the ball in the rain, I'll do 10 times better on a dry court when the sun is out. But playing ball with pushed me to be better, even though I sucked and I wasn't good. I enjoy playing basketball, but that idea of running with someone who is far, far beyond what I would be able to do, but also still staying realistic. And then in the police world, and I hate bringing up the police world, but that's, my profession. But in the police world, I would attach myself to people who are really good at stuff, really good homicide detectives, really good interviewers. I'd pay attention to what they were doing, and I would just try to learn as much as I could, not get overwhelmed and think, well, I can't do what they can do yet, but can I do it in 6 months, a year? My next interview, can I implement some of the things that I've learned? So it is that idea of attaching yourself to someone who is really, really performing at a higher level or who is really skilled in something, but being realistic and saying, can I just take a little bit at a time, digest it, and apply it to whatever that skill set is.
I really like that. Dane, what do you think?
Yeah. So growing up, I used to watch all these ski movies as a young kid, teenager, and there was a rider named Sammy Carlson, and he was probably, I think we're about the same age, and he was already filming with the top tier film company at the time, throwing down super banger segments, like well known in the industry. And he was probably only like, I don't know if he might have been 16 at the time or 14. I'm not too sure. And at the time, I was still just watching the ski movies. I had like one sponsor. I was getting Flow product, and I was skiing at my local hill, filming with my buddies, making our edits. And I was really inspired by Sammy and really liked his segments. And eventually, through my path, I started filming with a satellite company of this film company that Sammy was working with called Poor Boys Productions. And I put out my first segment that year and like kind of got on the scene. And the next year I was filming with Poor Boys Productions, which Sammy was a part of. And I don't think at the time we had met yet. But I ended up winning Skier of the Year that year at the International Free Ski Film Festival and was on the world stage right there. And over the years, Sammy and I became good friends and skied together, competed together, and have traded awards back and forth over the years. And for me, it was really just about continuing with my own process and pursuing my dream and watching people that I looked up to and creating my own style and emulating bits of their style and working on my own skiing. And so I would say mainly it's just about finding that inspiration. And like we've talked about throughout the podcast today, really following your own process and staying dedicated to that. And over time, you'll be able to most likely compete with those people that you're looking up to.
Mm-hmm. Dave, thoughts?
Yeah, I echo all that. So the question specifically from myself, to find a coach that can really help you along, that has been through the process, that is experienced, knows the steps. It helped me so much in the start of either motocross racing or my career or running, all of those. And I really sought out leadership within my career that I can almost attach myself to in certain ways, almost like an executive coach, and really to show me the path, because the path isn't clear to people that have never been into it. And those of us that are experienced often don't really realize just how little we knew when we first started off. So I find now at the point that I'm at in my career and with even my athletics, if I can help to show people that are starting off the little bits that I learned along the way, it's so beneficial. So I would say the key thing for me is to find a coach, find somebody that you can emulate and that can help you formulate a plan that's proven, and then learn from that and adapt to that and make it fit your reality. And then as you go through that and gain experience, you can begin coaching yourself to a certain extent. But I find having the vision so useful and helpful. And to get that vision, you need to surround yourself with the people that have been there before sometimes, or have experience going into the unknown and have learned from that. And even just relating to people that have experienced new horizons themselves helps you to break through to those new horizons as well.
Mm-hmm. Shaun, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I've been on both sides of the coin. I've been the guy who has been looking for not inspiration, but guidance or leadership in experience and competence. So someone who's far ahead of me in whatever trajectory I'm curious about. I've been in that position so many times where I've looked to the future and sought people who know how to play that game. I can't even count. I've just met a lot of cool people in life that have really helped me along the way. So through that process of being helped so much, it doesn't matter whether it was shooting, parachuting, all the shootings. It doesn't matter. Yeah, pick a sport, pick an activity, pick a part of my life, and all of it is being formed based on people who were far better than I was and following their guidance. But then when you go through that process enough, eventually you'll find that now you're guiding, now that you're leading, now that you're coaching. And so that's what led to a 15-year high-performance race coaching career. I didn't think I'd ever do that, but then you're on the other side of the coin. Now you're the person who is being reached out to. I used to be the guy who was reaching out, and now you're the guy who's getting reached out to. And so I think that what I'd like to say is this. How do you realistically start to develop yourself in that direction? Reach out to me. And I don't even coach anymore, but I know Al, and we've talked, so he doesn't need to reach out to me. But as the proxy, reach out. Even if it's someone that you don't think would give you their time of day, or that they're too high up on the stratosphere, whatever that means, that they wouldn't ever talk to you. I get lots of people drop me DMs on the regular that say, Shaun, I know you don't have the time to ... Well, if I've got the time, I'll give you my time. So if you have questions or you have struggles or you have, like, if you're in the hurt locker, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, and you identify me as someone who can help you, don't hesitate. Don't think that you can't contact me, and don't think that you can't contact any of the panel members if you think somehow they can help you. Obviously, don't be a burden. Don't eat up a whole pile of their personal time, but reach out to people who you think can give you a minute of their time to provide guidance.
Mm-hmm. To that point, we would not have 3/4 of the guests that we had on the show if I didn't just reach out to people that I wanted to talk to, right? Like this is most of the networking that we have done for this show specifically. I've had to literally take out of my head and go, doesn't matter, ask them anyway, whether whatever I believe or not, just ask. Because then, what's the worst that happens? They say no, or you don't get a response. Okay, well, you're not moving anywhere from where you were to begin with. So,
Well, there is one other intermediary position there. It's either a yes, no, or hey, I know someone who can help you.
yes,
And that's usually the
absolutely.
case. I mean, my network is your network. Your network is our network. That individual's network is now someone else's network. Our network is thousands of people now. And it's not that that's any claim to fame, because it's a minor point. But the point is, when you start connecting with people, you're developing networks that can help you. Not like be burdensome helpful, but helpful. And so just reach out, start forming your networks.
Yeah, 100%. Now we are just at time right now, so let's go down the panel, get some final thoughts, and then we will shut her down for the day. Dane, I'm going to start with you. What do you think? Final thoughts?
I feel like we've covered so much already. It would just be saying things again. So, just dream big and know that most things are accomplishable over time. So set realistic expectations as far as your time is concerned, and just stay diligent to your process and make sure to manage your downside risk, and don't fail too big at any one moment. Just
There you
keep
go.
pursuing that path.
I like it. Dave, some final thoughts?
Yeah, so I think what's realistic is highly variable on the individual. And keep in mind that sometimes you may not actually want to achieve what you think you want to achieve, because the huge amount of effort and time it takes to get there. But if you do want to achieve those things, you probably can, given enough time, and if you find the right coach and surround yourself with the right people.
100%. BC, final thoughts?
Yeah, the same thing they're saying. I would also just kind of add, a lot of people hear me talk about PMA and pushing a positive mental attitude, but I mean, it really is the first step, is just kind of opening your mind and keeping that winning attitude, or that positivity. And like we had talked about earlier, just check when you say if something is realistic or unrealistic. And the realistic is very easy to accomplish, just small increments at a time. But it's the main thing to stay positive and be kind to other people. Just like you said, when you reach out to people and strangers, that's the main reason I'm on Instagram. I've never used social media until about 2 years ago when I started writing, or 2 or 3 years ago, I started writing for a magazine. But that was it. Starting to reach out to people and network. And you reached out to me, hey, jump on the show. I'm like, yeah, I'll definitely do it. So, and I've got some people in mind that I think would make great guests for you in the future. So,
Yes.
yeah, reach out to people. I'm all about talking, man. So I dig it.
Outstanding. Shaun, some final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate that positive forward trajectory is how I like to think of it. So it's a different acronym. Not as good as yours, buddy.
That's okay.
I know, I'm trying. I'm trying to keep it realistic. So I would encourage everyone out there to identify something that is realistic, and with positive forward trajectory, make it realistic. And I know that's a play on words, but you've almost got to look at the extremes of your edges. Find something that is insane, is crazy to do. Find something that you'll never accomplish, and then go accomplish it.
I like it. I think the biggest thing that stops a lot of people is learning about themselves. Because if you don't know what you find realistic or non-realistic, you'll never know what you can accomplish. So I would say to everybody, get out there, start learning about yourself. That way you can build yourself up, build that confidence, and grow into the person that you're meant to be. And you can do that with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.